The Beatles are renowned for their invention in the studio. When it came to 1968 and they were recording the White Album, they recorded over 100 takes for songs like Sexy Sadie and Not Guilty, the latter of which they decided not to even release. There is a slight issue with the premise of this video. When it came to the White Album, their recording methods changed. Instead of rehearsing and then recording, they left the tape running while they experimented with arrangements. So rather than rehearsing extensively before recording, many of those exploratory performances were captured on tape. Suffice to say, no songs on the White Album were completed in one take, with no overdubs.
And we made a decision, this was the basic rhythm track. The only thing you used it for when you mixed it was level. You didn't put more EQ on it, you didn't do anything. And because of that, we made a decision, we loved that basic rhythm track. Then we do the overdubs. There's nothing superfluous when you really analyse any of these Beatles songs. There's nothing superfluous. There's no overdub on those records. It doesn't mean anything. It was all sort of planned out. We didn't just say, well, overdub this, overdub over that. You know, it's just, that's the way we structured the recording process on all those records. And when you really analyse them, there's really nothing on them when you say, well, there's a little drum roll, there's a little this, a little that. But every little overdub after the basic rhythm track meant something.
The other issue with the premise of this video is overdubbing. A song like Ticket to Ride was recorded technically in one full take. One false start, and then take two was the take used. But this isn't entirely accurate. Previously, the Beatles' overdubs had been given individual take numbers, but from 1965 onwards, these editions were unnumbered. As a result, although a song may appear to have been completed in just a handful of takes, it could have required a great many extra recordings before completion. So that really leaves us with just a few songs that were truly completed on the first take. The first two songs on the list come from the famous One Day, Please Please Me album recording session. First was Ringo's Boys, recorded quickly in the final session of the day when the pressure was on to record 5 songs in just a matter of hours.
Well, actually, they did give me a go on the LP, and between you and me, I think that's the track that's selling it. And it's a number called Boys.
And I started playing this song when I was with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. Yeah. And then I moved on to that other band you know about. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. It's called Boys.
Woo! Next was the most famous Beatles first take, Twist and Shout.
But when we first started off recording, I just heard Twist and Shout the other day on the radio, and I was telling the kids, I was saying we did that like at the end of a 10-hour session that we took to make our first album. We had to save that one to the end, and if you listen to John's voice, you can tell he's been singing for 10 hours. You know, it's really, it's brilliant, you know, screaming and really gutsy. But we had to save that one right till the end because we couldn't have done the other stuff if he'd have sung that first. We just wrecked him. Well, I'd say we did do that album that contained some good stuff like Twist and Shout in one day. Now, you won't hear of people doing that any longer, but it gets spirit in it that way. You get this real good spontaneous spirit that if you're lucky enough to be able to get that on record.
The first album was recorded in one long 12-hour session. The last song to be done was a song called Twist and Shout, which nearly killed me. It was the last song after 12 hours of singing and being in a recording studio. And I was always bitterly ashamed of it because I sang it better than that, you know. But now it doesn't bother me. You can hear that I'm just some frantic guy, you know, doing his best. But it was the nearest thing to trying to capture us live, you know. The nearest thing to as we might have sounded in Hamburg or Liverpool. It's about the nearest it could get to knowing what we sounded like before we became the clever Beatles.
Despite all this talk, Twist and Shout actually did have a second take. However, the song we all know and love was take 1, so it's included on this list. The comparison of Twist and Shout and the next song on the list is one of many amazing Lennon-McCartney mirrorings. 1 year after John recorded one of the greatest rock and roll vocals in one take, Paul matched him with an ultra-impressive one-take recording of Long Tall Sally.
Richard, did you really teach Paul how to do that yell?
Yes, I did.
I loved all those interviews he did where he was telling everybody that he taught Paul how to yodel.
How did you do it?
He was standing in the wing of the stage, and I was saying, woo! He would say, woo! I said, woo! He said, woo! I said, woo! He go, woo!
Well, he didn't teach him. That was always the joke. Paul just decided to woo! And little Richard from that day on told him how he taught Paul to woo! But that was Little Richard. And we love the man.
The Beatles opened for Little Richard in England, and you opened for Little Richard a lot. There's been a rumor going around for years that Little Richard taught Paul McCartney how to whale. And we've got to, remember Long Tall Sally and She Loves You and those. Did he?
Well, not She Loves You. I've got to stop you then. I said Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, that's what you meant to say, right?
Yeah. All right.
That I use on a few records with the Beatles was actually a Little Richard impression, first off, yeah. What used to happen was the last day of school, it used to be a kind of free day when you're allowed to bring guitars and stuff, so a couple of us did, and we'd stand up on the desks, all the other kids would go, yeah, and we'd go, wow, and wail a bit, you know. And when we got to Hamburg later and met Richard, we did kind of sit at the feet of the master a bit, you know, because he's a great guy. He's a complete nutcase, but he's a lovely man.
You can still whale.
Yeah, I can, so can he.
The Beatles' backing on the track, including George Martin on piano, was so perfect that they didn't even bother with a second take. The first was perfection. Now we move on to October 18th, 1964.
In those days, we didn't release a single off an album, or rather, when we came to put an album together, we did not include the singles in it.
I think we were beginning to do a little bit of overdubbing in those days. It's probably a 4-track.
Quite quick in the studio when you think about it. 2 songs in 3 hours.
On October 18th, they jammed a hectic 9-hour recording session in between dates of their penultimate UK tour. The boys ended the day recording 3 songs in a total of just 5 takes. 3 takes of Buddy Holly's Words of Love, and 1 take each of 2 rock and roll covers. First, George sang lead vocal on a cover of Carl Perkins' Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby. The most notable aspect of this song is the vast amount of steed, single tape echo and echo delay, plastered all over George's vocal. The result of this is a slightly bizarre and unique tin can quality to the recording. For the purpose of this list, however, a heavy asterisk has to be placed against it. Almost certainly it received some overdubbing that is not reported on the session notes. Ringo's drums as well as a tambourine is heard on the track. It was likely overdubbed afterwards. And also that we can hear that George double-tracked his vocals during the last 8 measures of each verse.
From time to time, George is allowed to do a number when the Beatles have been, right, George?
That's right, yeah, sometimes, like.
You're sounding a
I've got
fine
a cold and a cough and a sore throat and a cough and a cold. But yeah, apart from that,
Otherwise, you'd like to do a song for us?
Yeah, but, you know, I'll probably be having a bit of trouble, but yeah,
well,
don't worry.
You know, we'll all realise that you're doing your best.
Yeah.
What should it be?
Thank you. The one off the new LP, what it's called, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, and I didn't write it, even though it is conceited.
Well, it took some honey.
After this, the Beatles performed a scintillating 1-take recording of Chuck Berry's rock and roll music, with a slightly echoed Lennon vocal. It had all the Beatles on their familiar instruments, and George Martin again displayed his prowess as a rock and roll pianist. It has no overdubs, it's just a magnificent live performance.
John, as we were saying earlier, although you had this admiration for Chuck for this many years, today was the first actual meeting.
I met him, I think he's the greatest. I really love him. It's an honour to be here backing him.
That's very lovely. You want to handle this introduction?
Yeah. If you were to try and give rock and roll another name, you might call it Chuck Berry, right? In the 1950s, the whole generation worshipped his music, and when you see him perform today, past and present all come together, and the message is, hail, hail, rock and roll, right on.
So that leaves 4 songs that were fully completed on the first take, with no overdubs. What's perhaps most fascinating is that every one of these one-take recordings is a cover. They aren't Lennon-McCartney compositions painstakingly crafted in the studio. They're rock and roll songs the Beatles had been playing night after night in Hamburg and Liverpool, long before they walked into EMI studios. And perhaps that's the greatest reminder of all. Before they became the world's greatest recording artists, the Beatles were one of the world's greatest live bands.